Welcome to the tutorial on critical thinking for PR professionals. In this tutorial, we'll discuss why critical thinking is important and what exactly critical thinking is, particularly in the context of public relations work. Critical thinking is defined as reflective reasoning about beliefs and actions. That means that you're taking the time before putting a message out when you're doing PR work to reflectively think about how different groups of constituencies might interpret the message and determine whether it'll be interpreted positively or negatively. You can also use critical thinking to determine if statements are always true, partially true, sometimes true, or false. If you put a message out there that's false, chances are you're going to have a lot of negative reaction to that statement. But if you put out a true statement, you're probably going to have a positive reaction. Critical thinking is imperative for PR professionals because you need to think critically about the messages that you're putting out there on behalf of your clients and that you're putting out there for yourself to promote your own brand, so that you know whether you should be putting that message out. If it's something that after reflecting on it, you feel is going to encounter a negative backlash, obviously then you won't put it out. But it's important to take time, reflect on the message, think about it from multiple perspectives, and then decide whether it should be published or not. We see critical thinking in a broader context being used throughout education and most professions as well, just like PR professionals have to use it. And critical thinking actually originated both in Western and Eastern culture hundreds of years ago. So ancient Greece is known for using what's called the Socratic method, which puts people on the spot. A teacher will ask a student a question, randomly call on a student, not wait for them to raise their hand, and expect them to have a good answer to the question. Generally, this is done in a public setting to kind of put some pressure under the student. And that method forces people to think critically at very specific times and to think critically about very specific things. Meant to put a little pressure on them, but if you can reflectively reason on something while you're under pressure, then it said you're thinking very well. Now in Eastern culture, it's actually known to be all about Buddha's charter of free inquiry. The idea is that you should be free to inquire about all different things. You should be free to take the time to reflect and reason on them. And that's a really important component of developing your own beliefs and learning. So that's the history of critical thinking. And when you're talking about critical thinking for PR professionals, I want you to really think about that, because for a PR professional, you need to think about both concepts, both the Eastern and the Western interpretation of critical thinking, so that you can really see how important it is to prepare your messages for two different cultures and to take the time to inquire about things, but to make sure that you are doing it in a specific manner related to your PR work. Now, when it comes to the PR work that you'll be doing, it's important to analyze the content that you're producing to see how it will be received by different constituencies or different groups of people. For example, people in the South might view it differently than people in the North, or people in America might view it differently than people in Russia. You also want to think about different religions, different ethnicities, different genders, different income brackets. Those are all big factors in how people interpret things differently. So you'll want to go ahead and make sure you think critically about whatever messages you're publishing from all of those perspectives to see if all of those perspectives will have a fairly positive reaction to your message, then it should be published. Or at the very least, if the key demographics you're trying to reach will think positively about your message, then it should be published. Okay, you also want to analyze how the content you're producing relates to your brand. You want to make sure it reflects well on your brand and goes hand in hand with the overall brand that you're trying to promote for your client or even for yourself. That means that before you post anything or even just retweet something or share something on Facebook that someone else posted, you want to consider the deeper meaning behind it. So that involves asking yourself a few specific questions. Number one, you need to verify the facts. So you don't just want to post links to articles that you haven't verified the facts of yourself, because you don't know if those facts are accurate. Now, if it comes from a very reputable source, perhaps you can get away without verifying it, but you need to make sure that the source you're sharing is extremely reputable. Now, with that said, you also have to consider whether you want to be connected to that particular source. If that source doesn't represent your values or its image doesn't coincide with your image, then you might not want to be connected with it in any way. You also want to think about whether the information you're sharing is positive or negative or neutral and balanced. That can be really important depending on what type of message you're trying to convey. Additionally, you want to think about how your public will perceive the message, as we've already discussed, and whether there are any other ways it could possibly be interpreted. So, for example, you want to go ahead and make sure that you think about, well, I think it could be interpreted this way, but if someone somehow misinterpreted it, what would their likely misinterpretation be? And see if you're okay with that misinterpretation. Now, you'll likely have multiple misinterpretations to consider, and it's important to consider all of them. If there's one that you're not okay with the result of, then you should think critically about how to change your message to prevent that misinterpretation from occurring. Now, in society, we use critical thinking in order to help prevent a herd mentality. So you've probably heard the phrase herd thinking or herd mentality, and that comes from a situation in which people as individuals don't think critically about something, but instead just follow the other people. They become part of the herd, so to speak, and they don't think critically about the messages that they're hearing, and instead just assume everything is accurate. As a PR professional, it is your job not to fall victim to herd thinking. You need to think critically about your messages. You need to analyze them in detail. However, you are trying to create herd thinking among your potential clients or consumers. So your goal with your content is to make it go viral. Make it something that people don't have to question and don't have to think too hard about, so that they can have that herd mentality and you can get a large number of people supporting your cause. The other way that you can use critical thinking is to help you make an emotional connection to your clients or consumers. So, use your brand stories to draw people in and make them feel an emotional connection to a brand. You need to define your brand's purpose in order to do this. Now, when considering your brand's purpose, you want to analogize it to basically a hero's journey. So if you watch a movie, you see that there's a hero in the movie, and the hero takes this journey where there's some ups and downs. He has to overcome a struggle in order to succeed. You want to use that formatting to go ahead and develop a journey for your brand and a purpose for your brand. So think about what kind of hero your brand is and what that journey for your brand is that has those hard things that the brand has had to overcome. And then think about whether the brand can really be a champion that others will want to follow. Someone inspiring, someone motivating, someone who has overcome difficult odds. And then think about what the benefit is to your followers of following that brand or that hero. If there's no benefit to the followers, then they're not going to do it, no matter how impressive they may think the hero's journey is. So you want to make sure that your messaging makes it very clear what the benefit is to followers. So for example, Whole Foods. It's a grocery store if you're unfamiliar with it. And it basically presents an image of a health-conscious shopper who is willing to spend a little extra money to get fresh, locally sourced food that's healthy. So lots of vegetables, fruits, that kind of thing. Now, if you follow Whole Foods on social media, you'll actually see a lot of recipes. You'll also see tips on composting because they do try and be an environmentally friendly group. And they also support local farmers. So as a shopper, you may have an emotional response. You may feel like you're doing something good by shopping at Whole Foods. And that's the key. You want your followers to get some sort of emotional connection to your story, to your brand, in order to rein them in and get them to stay with you for a long time. And Whole Foods has been pretty successful in doing that. Now, there are a number of benefits to critical thinking. If you do critically think about the messages that you're putting out, you can make sure that the images and messages you're publishing unite people around the specific brand that you're trying to promote, or even a cause that your brand is supporting. Keep in mind, emotion is the most powerful public motivator. So finding a way to appeal to people emotionally will really help you here to build that unification among all of your consumers. And as a professional communicator, this is also a power that you will develop throughout the rest of this program. And that once you have it, you need to use responsibly and ethically. Like I said, a good PR professional can inspire herd thinking. But if you inspire herd thinking about something that's completely factually inaccurate or that's unethical, you're not doing good in the world. And we always want to try and improve the world and make sure that the brands we're promoting are doing well. So please use your ability to inspire herd thinking in a responsible and ethical manner. Now, if you do have any questions about critical thinking, please feel free to contact your instructor. Thank you so much for listening to this tutorial and have a great day.